dear, my dear moderator.
Hindi pa po lumalabas sa akin.
Ayan. Ayan. I think it's live now. There's one person viewing it. Oh, I think. By the way, guys, kung sino yung mga hindi naka-attend may mga hindi ba naka-attend ng last lecture ko? Your lectures are available in my YouTube account. You can add me. You can every day every lecture that we have it there. It's also divided into the specific sections that you may not be as strong as. So for example, you're not as good as you think you are in susceptibility testing. You might be able to get it. You might be able to get a refresher there, here and there. Anyway, I think that's it. Mark, are we okay now?
Yeah.
All right, so we can
Yes po.
go. All right. So let's start now with susceptibility testing. What is the main purpose of susceptibility testing before we begin? General idea from the class. Let's start with Nigel because she's wearing blush on, and I think this is from the oils that she was eating for her snacks. I suppose I think she has lip tint because of the oils. Okay, Nigel or Nigel.
To determine po yung antibiotics that can kill a certain bacteria.
Okay, so in terms of therapeutics, Nigel, hoy, hindi ko pa sinabi na mag-unmute ka. Hi. All right. So your follow-up question is, what's the importance of determining the antibiotics that kill the organism?
If napapatay niya pa po ba, like for example, if the organism is susceptible to that, or the person, rather, sorry, wait. If yung person that has the bacteria ay kaya pang magamot ng certain drug.
Okay, very good. Right? That's good. We're understanding the basic applications of what we do in the laboratory. So you now know why medtechs or medical technologists or clinical laboratory scientists, if you want to work abroad, right? You guys are known. You guys will have the profession as clinical laboratory scientists. If you want to work in the UK, you'll be known as a biomedical scientists. That sounds so fancy, but all in all, what you do is just streak. But yeah, you guys have a basic understanding of susceptibility testing. So one of the main importance of susceptibility testing is selecting a particular drug that would be used for therapy. Okay, that would be used for therapy. Aside from that one, I love. There's a cat. Is that a cat or a dog? It's a cat. Oh my god. Hi, kitty. Anyway,
Sorry, sir.
I
Ginugulo
love
niya
it.
ako.
It's not a bother at all. Don't worry. I'm not bothered at all. I like animals. If you guys have animals there, you can show it to me later on, okay? All right. So anyway, the main importance of it is, of course, selecting the drug for therapy. That's the main reason. But there is also a diagnostic relevance of susceptibility testing, because you can help save a patient by determining whether or not there is multi-drug resistance, right? So multi-drug resistance is something that is emerging, or it's a burgeoning trend right now. Because why do you think it's a problem in today's society? There's so many drugs and people just drink it as if it was vitamins, right? Because they don't have an understanding. Majority of people who are not working in the medical field would often say, "I feel like I'm having a headache. I think I should drink an antibiotic." Right? That's the most common statement that you would hear from somebody who is not knowledgeable about medicines or anything related to the medical field. And you'll often see some people in the comments, somebody said, "I don't like that. I would rather drink antibiotics because antibiotics help clear my throat." Ha? 'Di ba? Help clear my throat? Yun ba talaga ang purpose ng antibiotics? Antibiotics? No. 'Di ba? Pampatay kasi siya ng mga bayot. Charot, charot lang. Charing lang. Charing lang. Charot. Charot. Kayo talaga. Natawa na naman yung iba. Oh, unti lang yung tumawa. Charing. Pero hindi. Pero yun talaga yun. Kailangan, as medtechs, usually it's the pharmacist's job to do this, but you guys have have basic core understanding of susceptibility and resistance. So you can help your family members be enlightened on how antibiotics are used. So please, walang magsasabi na, ay, dapat yan ang kukunin mo. Kailangan mo ng amoxiclav. Kasi yun yung pinakamalakas. Oh, pinainom si patient ng ng amoxiclav. After 2 decades, nagkaroon siya ng MRSA infection. Lahat ng antibiotics resistant na. Wala na tayong maselect. 'Di ba? Experimental chemotherapy na ang ginagamit. 'Di ba? Yun yung kailangan. Kaya yun yung importance ng trabaho natin. Hindi tayo basta na lang nagagawa ng mga tests sa microorganisms. We are also responsible for at least helping the public understand why antimicrobial resistance is important. Okay? Is a burgeoning trend right now. Now, let's differentiate two things first. What is bacteriostatic and what is bactericidal? From the name itself, cidal, homicide, 'di ba? Homicide, patricide, 'di ba? Pag sinabi mong ganun, may pinapatay. It kills the bacteria. What about bacteriostatic? From the word itself, from the Latin term statum, meaning it is stopping something, or it inhibits the growth of something. Okay? So that's basically it. It kills and it slows down, or it allows or if we want to be much more specific, we inhibit rather the replication of bacteria. Sometimes bacteriostatic agents are better than bactericidal. Why? Because bactericidals usually target a large spectrum of microorganisms, and they can destroy even normal flora. That's why we rarely advise, physicians rarely prescribe experimental drug therapies or experimental chemotherapy. Okay? Alright? Okay ba? Okay? Si Minty naging pusa na. Alright? Nag-iba na yung nag-transform na din siya. Alright. Now, we can differentiate a broad-spectrum antibiotic from a narrow-spectrum antibiotic by basically reading broad and narrow. Narrow means that it's a targeted therapy, while broad spectrum, it covers a large group of microorganisms. Very easy, right? Broad spectrum antibiotics that are used for the treatment of a large population of bacteria, i.e. gram-negative only. Okay? Narrow spectrum treats a specific genera or a strain of bacteria. Example is MRSA. See? Easy, right? Clear? It's clear? What's the difference between bactericidal and bacteriostatic? What's the difference between narrow spectrum and what's the difference between broad spectrum? This is pharmacology 101, guys. Okay? So please be mindful of these terminologies. You might be asked these questions in your exams, maybe from me or maybe from another exams or another exam that that you may encounter in the future. All right, now what are the two methods of susceptibility testing? Well, you have the tube method, okay? And we have Kirby-Bauer disc diffusion. Microplate dilution or tube dilution is rarely done in the laboratory anymore. But some automated devices like Vitek 2, as I mentioned before, and Phoenix BD usually do automated microplate dilutions. What is microplate dilutions? Basically, it's the machine will determine. Let me just give you guys a broad understanding of this one. Now, let me close the microplate dilution is basically spectrophotometry. So what blocks the light source or from reaching the endpoint of the spectrum of the readout meter, the growth of the microorganisms, right? So that's in that principle. If I'm not mistaken, for BD Phoenix, it reads the microplates every 8 hours. So you'll see cards like your passport, the size of your passport. You guys, of course, you guys have passports, right? So the size of your passport. So it will be each of those along that passport size card. You'll have small holes there that have the specific antibiotics, and function of the machine is to dispense a certain amount of bacterial suspension throughout the whole cassette. And obviously along the cassette you'll have let me just show it to you guys. It would be much better if I described it to you guys like this. Vitec cartridge. Yeah, this one. This one I think is a good one. An image. Oh, this one. Can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this one is a cartridge from Vitec 2. Okay, for BD Phoenix, it's inside the machine, so I can't actually show it to you. Um, so these are known as microplates. Okay, inside these microplates, you'll see this line here. This what do you call this? This small tubing here dispenses the bacterial suspension throughout the whole cartridge. Okay, and each cartridge has a specific antibiotic that will be read by a laser or a spectrophotometer inside the machine. And in every interval, the machine will read out. But the machine will read out the turbidity. So basically, There's a small plate there that determines the turbidity of your particular sample. Okay, so the determination of resistance and susceptibility is essentially attributed towards the turbidity of each plate. So the lasers, so it's light technology that allows the machine to give an interpretation of whether or not it's resistant or intermediate. So hindi na tayo nagbe-measure ng ganon. Yung i-measure mo siya with a ruler. I think you've seen those things in the books. Sometimes I think one of the covers of the books that you could see a medtech doing this, or a microbiologist doing measurements with a ruler in the plate. Very rarely do we do that in contemporary microbiology setups, unless of course the physician requests, is there a way for me to check if the patient has clindamycin, is resistant to clindamycin? So sometimes you would get special requests, but essentially they have to follow a specific therapeutic pattern. But that's for advanced microbiology. This one is more or less board review. Okay? Hindi ko kayo pahirapan. Mga dinidiscuss ko sa inyo, yun yung mga talagang tinatanong sa exam. Okay? So, kaya yun yung importance of microplate dilution. So, if you're familiar with this diffusion, the other name for that one is Kirby-Bauer method. Okay? Clear? So, yung microtiter, yun yung ibig sabihin nun. But there is other forms of microtiter plates. I'm not saying that that's the only one. There are other companies that offer the same type of tube or microplate methodologies. Okay? Okay ba? Clear? Clear, Minty?
Yes, sir.
Clear din sa pusa ni Minty? Okay? Alright. Now, let's move on to the next slide, which asks the question, the media used for antimicrobial susceptibility testing. What is the media used for antimicrobial susceptibility testing? Can anybody give me an answer? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Valiant or Minty?
MHA?
Ano yung MHA? Specifics. Baka mamaya MHA, ibig ko sabihin Manila Health Association. Diba?
Sir, ako.
Ano, sige.
MHA po, Mueller-Hinton-Agar.
Alright, very good. It's actually Mueller-Hinton-Agar, but whatever. Again, pronunciation is not our forte here. We're more or less focused on the correct answer. And you are correct! Diba? Gay ka na ba? Valiant, gay na! Alright, o diba? Natawa na naman sila kahit ang corny ng joke ko. Thank you so much for laughing, guys. I really appreciate it. Now, there is what you call an ideal depth. There is what you call the ideals of susceptibility testing. I know, it's so stupid. So, kailangan talaga naming alalahanin. Yes. Would you believe it? I worked in a CAP accredited hospital before, and one of the things that they look for in our documentation is the depth of the agar, of the control agar. Yes, it's so stupid, but I know it's silly to remember it, but it is one of the documentations that we need to do when we want to create our own culture media. That's why the hospital said we have too much sample. We don't want to. We're just going to buy. We're just going to buy the culture media. It's too much work that should be done by another set of people. So they buy our hospital before we let go of the manual preparation of Muller Hinton, and we just opted for commercially prepared agars because you get a certification for each shipment that you have. So ideally the agar depth is supposed to be at around 4 millimeters, and the pH needs to be at around 7.2 to 7.4. Okay? So if you work in hospitals that have that are really particular with the details, and their main focus is on microbiology, you would see pH meters everywhere because you need to measure, of course, before you perform some of the analyses that you are going to do. Okay? Now, when preparing an inoculum for susceptibility testing, what media is used? What media is the inoculum first incubated in? Of course, you're going to incubate it in TSB. Okay? And for how long? It's about 2 to 5 hours at 37 degrees Celsius, of course, because you want to compare it to a specific item in the lab, and this is compared to with your barium sulfate. Okay, so your barium sulfate is also known as your McFarland standard. Are you guys familiar with the McFarland standard? No, of course. You guys kind of forgot about it. Don't worry, Mama is here to help you out. Anak, naaalala mo pa ba ang iyong ano? Hindi na anak. Okay, anak. Ito na siya, anak. Alright? So, anak, wag mong kakalimutan. Ha? The inoculum is prepared from is actually barium sulfate. The components is, if you want to make a 100 ml suspension or 100 ml solution, all you need is 99.5 ml of barium chloride. This is not megaliters, ha? It's millimeters. ML na small dapat yan. But unfortunately, the font allows only for capital letters. So, apologies on that one. You can change it on your own when you receive a copy of this particular lecture. Okay? So you need 99.5 ml of barium chloride and sulfuric acid at around 0.5 ml. Okay? 0.5 ml. You get barium sulfate. Okay? And that is also known as 0.5 McFarland standard. Okay? McFarland standard. So don't forget your McFarland standard. Okay? Clear? Clear? Okay.
Yes po.
All right. Wonderful. Now, when is it appropriate to quality control or make QA QC of a susceptibility testing? It's done on a weekly basis. Hindi pwedeng araw-araw. Okay? Mapapagod ang microbiology technicians. Imagine, one patient will require probably 5 to 10 plates of if you're using the small ones, the size of this talagang kinuha ko to kanina kasi sabi ko kailangan ko ng comparison. This is for usually the size of this, like a Pringles cup. Ilan lang ang pwede mong lagay na the Pringles cover. Ilan lang ang pwede mong ilagay na antibiotics diyan, 'di ba? And then kailangan may proper spacing pa siya. So imagine one patient will have how many plates? Because you can only fit like if you're really good at setting or plotting your antibiotic discs, you could probably put 6 in a petri dish the size of this one. If your hospital is good enough, the size of this plate would be the largest that you'll receive. So that's the reason why it's supposedly done on a weekly basis. And the quality control and quality assurance of susceptibility testing is as follows. This is something that we're going to talk about now. We need to use, of course, quality control organisms. Okay? So you need to use quality control organisms, and they need to be they can either be they need to be gram positive analogs, gram negative analogs, bacilli analogs, or um, bacilli analogs or cocci analogs. So usually in the laboratory, you use these three organisms: Escherichia coli, Staphylococcus, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Okay, so and they have to be in a particular. They have to be ATCC. What do you mean by ATCC? American Type Culture Collection. Okay, so every batch of control organisms that you're going to plant can't be organisms that you've isolated from the patient. Okay? They have to be regulated by a specific company. So if your hospital is using control organisms that have been isolated from patients, this could have false analysis. So it's supposed to be prepared by somebody else, somebody who has standards. So there's a manufacturer for control organisms also. Hindi pwede yung kinuha mo lang kay Clarice, tapos kung example merong respiratory infection na na-isolate kami kay Clarice na nagpatubo siya ng Pseudomonas aeruginosa dun sa sputum niya. Hindi pwede yon. Kailangan may pinanggalingan. Okay? And that's the purpose of American. That's the reason why you have to have an ATCC certificate for every reagent control organism that you will have. Similar to blood bank, 'di ba? Kailangan mo din ng hindi pwede. Although practice diyan sa Pilipinas na type A ako, sige, yan ang gagamitin natin. Parang ganun din siya kasi it needs to have certifications. Okay? So it has to follow compliance certification, and the manufacturer also has to follow compliance certifications, whether it be ISO, whether it's College of American Pathologists, it doesn't matter. As long as it's certified and it has been genetically determined. Everything needs to be genetically determined because otherwise, your controls aren't really controls. They are just experiments. Okay? So that's the difference between a quality control procedure and an experiment. Okay? You don't necessarily know everything. It's more or less the complexity of something is just random. Okay? Kaya nga katulad ngayon, kinuha lang natin kay Clarice na Pseudomonas. Random lang yun. Hindi naman natin alam talaga kung ano bang, baka nag-mutate na yung Pseudomonas aeruginosa kay Clarice. Di ba, Clarice? Di ba? Malay mo kasi on the first 2 days ng antibiotic therapy niya, nagte-take siya ng ng ano bang magandang ng cefoxitin. And then afterwards nagsulfonamide therapy si Clarice. O 'di ba? So nagkakaroon ng variation with the microorganisms itself. So we need to have a culture type called collection. That's the purpose of ATCC. Napaka-arte ng micro, sir. Yes, but it's the most fun section that you will have. Kasi talagang mukha kang scientist. 'Di ba? Kapag ka nasa I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying this as a shade to other sections of the laboratory. Kaso, feel mo talaga scientist ka sa micro kasi nga, nakasuot ka ng PPE, yung lab gown mo iba sa lab gown ng mga ibang staff kasi kailangan meron kayong biohazard, meron kayong BSc, what do you call this? Biohazard protocols. Especially if you're working in mycobacteriology. Kasi maliit lang na speck ng laway na tumalsik doon sa may gown mo, pwede kang mag-cause ng infection outside the hospital. So kaya kailangan talaga. Kaya parang feeling mo talaga scientist ka. Kasi pag sa CBC ka, katulad ng section na pinag-rotatean ko na most of the time, sa HEMA ako, mag-run lang ako ng ganyan. Lalagay ko yung EDTA dun sa may sa probe. Tapos yun na, tapos na yung trabaho ko. CBC is done, finished, printed, that's it. For microbiology kasi para ka talagang scientist. 'Di ba? Para kang scientist. Nasayang. Nasayang kasi single forever. Nandun ka na lang sa lab. Yung buong career mo nag-focus. Charing! Charing lang. Charing lang. Okay? So, yan yung ATCC type. Alright, so now there are ions present that needs to be measured or determined when you are doing quality control for your susceptibility media. Susceptibility testing media, rather. You need to measure the magnesium and the calcium components in your culture media. McFarland. Sorry, not in your McFarland, in your MHA or your Muller-Hinton agar. There are also two types of definition, two things that you need to define. What is MIC? What is MBC? So, anybody can give me a transcription of MIC and MBC? Madali lang yan. Sige. Pag hindi alam yan, pwedeng mag-review ulit. Babalik tayo sa video na to. Okay? Timestamp nyo na lang sa may YouTube video natin. MIC stands for Minimum Inhibitory Concentration. Alright? Minimum Inhibitory Concentration. The other one is MBC, Minimum Bacteriostatic Concentration. Okay? Clear? So ano ba yung pinagkaiba, sir? So minimum inhibitory concentration is the lowest concentration of antibiotic inhibition of bacterial growth. Okay? The other one is the antibiotic that shows 99% of microbacterial death or microbial death. Sorry. Microbial death. Okay? So death lang yung pinagkaiba. Inhibition of bacterial growth. Kaya nga inhibitory eh. Pero sir, di ba sabi mo kanina, bacteriostatic is different from bactericidal. Pero nga, 99, may pinag-uusapan tayong 99% of microbial death. Okay? Huwag masyadong pilosopo. Okay? Yan yung definition, galing yan dun sa libro. Anong magagawa ko? Di ba? Okay, ganon. Okay? Yan yung galing dun sa definition. Kinapi-paste ko lang dun sa definition ng libro eh. Pero that's the essence of it. It shows inhibition of bacterial growth, hence inhibitory concentration. And this is what, the first one is actually what we use in therapeutics. Okay? Alright? Very rarely would you see minimum bacteriostatic concentration unless you are designing a new antibiotic. Okay? This is usually used for research purposes. Okay? So dito tayo mag-focus sa minimum inhibitory concentration. Okay ba yun, guys? Para hindi tayo ma-confuse. Don't worry, hindi siya masyadong tinatanong sa board exam. Baka itanong ko lang sa exam ninyo kasi gusto ko kayong pahirapan. Diba? Ganun. Okay? Now, what is needed to perform tube susceptibility testing? Well, obviously, you need an antibiotic solution and bacterial suspension. So, your antibiotic solution could be in the form of a liquid. It could be in the form of a disc that you put on top of your agar. And, of course, you have to do serial dilution if you're going to use tube methods. Okay? Serial dilution of the antibiotic solution. Okay? Now, after placing the antibiotic disc in MHA, how long is diffusion allowed before incubation? Sir, talaga tinatanong din siya? Yes, of course. Actually, you have to allow it to stand for 3 to 5 minutes. Otherwise, there is false spreading or there could be false resistance or susceptibility. Okay? So, diffusion should be no longer than 15 minutes. Hindi pwedeng more than 15 minutes. Paano ko malalaman, sir, kung talagang nag-diffuse na siya? Kasi ilalagay mo sa incubator. Sa incubator kasi, the purpose of incubation is not only to provide the optimum or the ideal temperature requirements, but also to consistently dry what is supposed to be dried inside. So, nag-start na yung drying process nun. Okay, so basically, the diffusion process is allowed to stand or it is at a standstill once you put your agar in the incubator. Okay? Now, what are the 5 general actions of antibiotics? Sige. Sino makakasagot niyan? 5 general actions of antibiotics. I know you have a lot of this. You can read it in Google. You can Google it. But there are 5 general actions. Who can give me one or who can give me all? Sige. Ayan na sila. Nakalimutan na nila. I think pharmacology inulit siya. Sa microbiology inulit din siya. Alright, Nigel. You can give me one. You can give me all. Sige.
Inhibit protein synthesis.
Okay, protein synthesis. What else? Okay. I typed it in our chat box. Okay, who else is there? Somebody raised their hand but I didn't see it. Unmute yourself. Speak. Speak, my dear. Who else? Nag-raise ng hand. Pinaasa ako. Ayan na Eliza. Sorry, Eliza. Go.
Cell wall synthesis po.
Alright. Inhibition of cell wall synthesis. Hindi nagpo-promote ng cell wall. Specifics, Eliza, ha? Specifics. Inhibition of cell wall synthesis. Okay?
Okay po,
Baka
sorry.
mamaya nagpo-promote ng cell wall synthesis. Hoy, hindi antibiotic yon. Mutagen yon. Ikaw talaga, ha? Cell wall synthesis. Okay. Cell wall synthesis. Okay, who else have any ideas? Clarice Solabo.
Alteration of cell membranes po.
Okay, alteration of cell membrane. Very good. All right, alteration of cell membrane or cell wall function or alteration of cell wall function. That will be, I'll also accept that as an answer. Okay, alteration of cell wall function. Kasi when you say alteration of cell wall membrane, that's basically the same thing. All right. Next, who else knows the answer? Wala na? Wala nang may idea? Arnie, any more? Minty? Wala? Okay. So the remaining one is folic acid inhibition. Folic acid pathway inhibition. Okay. And the last one is DNA synthesis. DNA synthesis inhibition. Okay? Clear? Clear ba, guys? Clear? Okay. Now, these are the things. It inhibits the folic acid pathway, cell wall function, nucleic acid or DNA synthesis, protein synthesis, and cell wall synthesis. Okay? All right. Now, examples of antibiotics that inhibit cell wall synthesis. So you have only two groups. Okay? Only two groups, and there are several generic names under this. You have to remember this, guys. You have to remember this. There is one question in the board exam that asked, which of the following is not a beta-lactamase inhibitor? Or not a beta-lactamase antibiotic, not a beta-lactam inhibitor. So you need to remember your cephalosporins, carbapenems, penicillin, monobactams, and augmentin or beta-lactam combinations. Okay? Glycopeptides include your vancomycin. All right? Now, considered vancomycin is considered as the first line of antibiotic for what microorganisms? These are organisms that are resistant to the rest, and these are given to patients with MRSA and Clostridium difficile. You've heard me say about Clostridium difficile earlier, right? It's an ongoing trend in the United States. A lot of people are opting for fecal transplants. Totoo, sir, meron bang fecal transplant? As in yung tae, itinatransplant? Yes, that's a trend right now. Okay? Huwag kayong masyado nandidiri. Kasi nga, nagkaroon ng overgrowth ng Clostridium difficile. Nagkakaroon ng pasyente ng problem with the gastrointestinal tract. And to combat that one, we transfuse, not transfuse actually, we transplant feces from one patient's large intestine or colon to another patient. Pero di ba sir, parang ew. Alam ko, nag-iinarte ka dyan, Valiant, sa isip mo. Parang, ew, medyo masuka-suka na ako, sir. Ew, yuck. Girl. Pero talaga, may nangyari ganun. Teka lang, wait lang. I think pinanood ko siya before tayong nag-attend ng ano. Kasi sabi ko, it's interesting for the kids. Hang on a sec. Let me just check it out. Mamaya ko na i-set yung video nun. Kasi medyo kadiri. Alright, so baka, yuck. Baka sabihin ninyo, sir, ew. Pero yun, that's the reason why the first line of defense for MRSA and Clostridium difficile is
Sir,
vancomycin.
excuse me.
Anong kagustuhan?
New name na si Clostridium.
Ha?
May new name na si
Ay,
Clostridium.
oo nga pala. Ano nga yon, Sir Marco? Sige na, para may screen time ka.
Clostridioides.
Di ba? Clostridioides na siya. Okay. Alright. So, actually, sir, the reason why I didn't change it to Clostridioides is because I've still been seeing questions from previous, I think 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago, they're still using Clostridium. But you have to go with Clostridioides. Bakit? Kasi nga, parang nakakalito, di ba, Sir Marco daw? Parang yun yung reason. Hindi ko malala kung yun ba yung reason, Clostridioides.
Hindi ko alam kung ba't nila pinilitan, but
parang
sila, so.
parang kahileran niya na anaerobic din daw parang yun yung anaerobic daw kasi din yung most species ng Clostridioides, like Bacteroides, di ba, yung mga ganon. Parang yun yung naalala ko. Parang yun yung naalala ko I'm not sure. And sir naman, advanced yan. Yung Gramstein, nahihirapan pa silang sumagot. Clostridioides ba?
No, kasi baka sa board exam, ganyan
na
yung choices, hindi nila alam.
So, new name, Clostridioides difficile. Okay? So, be mindful of these things. Okay? So, thank you so much, Sir Marco. Yeah. I neglected to inform you guys about that one. Anyway, it's on me. Don't worry. Gcash to Sir Marco na lang. Di ba? Di ba? Gusto mo yun, Sir Marco? Gcash to Sir Marco. Alright.
Magkano ba?
Pang ano, pang Welkin lang. Charot.
Sige. Hindi ko natanggihan yan, kala nyo. Mukhang pera kami lahat dito, no?
Oo nga pala, no? Alright, so yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Sir Marco. And now we're going to move on with the examples of antibiotics that inhibit protein synthesis. So you have tetracycline, okay? You have aminoglycosides. You have also macrolides. You also have, what's the other? Chloramphenicol, yeah, very good. I still remember my pharmacology. So thank you so much. So tetracyclines, aminoglycosides, macrolides, and chloramphenicol. So all of the two ones that would inhibit the 30S subunit is tetracyclines and aminoglycosides, and macrolides are 30S, and chloramphenicol is also 30S. Okay, what are these? These are genes related. These are genes basically that are related to protein synthesis. Okay? Okay. Clear? So generic names that follow. Generic names under the following. Sir, bakit tayo nag-antibiotics? Bakit pa yun ang pinag-aaralan? Kasi nga susceptibility testing ang pinag-uusapan natin. Huwag kayo masyadong echosera dyan, class ha. Minty ha, yung pusa mo ha. Alam ko nagrereklamo siya. Kala ko ba medtech lang ang inaaral? Bakit merong pharmacology? Kasi kailangan ninyong maalala. You will know later on because we have D tests, we have also other tests that will determine certain microorganisms. Okay? Or you have E tests also. So aminoglycosides are GTA, Grand Theft Auto, hindi ganon. Gentamicin, tobramycin, amikacin. Okay? Easy to understand, easy to remember. GTA. Don't forget lahat ng may mga mycin sa dulo na GTA. Alright? Tetracyclines are, of course, tetracycline and doxycycline. Alright? For therapeutics. Macrolides includes your erythromycin and your clindamycin. Now, the reason why I discussed this is because you need to use D-test to determine clindamycin resistance. Okay? D-test. So, what is D-test ba? I'll show you what D-test is. I think sinerch ko na siya kanina. Ba't nawala yung tab? D-test. Okay. I think I searched it earlier. Alright, so this is what you do when you have D-test. This is what you get when you do D-test. Can you guys see?
Yes, sir.
Alright, so look at this side first. Which one has D? Looks like a D. Figure A, figure B, figure C, or D? Of course, letter D, right? You can see a D here. Right? Why is it important to determine clindamycin resistance? Of course, because that's because it would be falsely read as a, what do you call this? It will be falsely read as clindamycin. It will automatically mean clindamycin resistance when it tests positive for clindamycin, when it tests positive for D test. Okay? So manual methodologies tayo. So for example, you get this reaction. It means that it's sensitive to both. Okay? This one you get resistance to both. Okay? And then this one is erythromycin resistant, clindamycin non-resistant. Okay? Now what happens with this one? What happens with this one is the microorganisms, as the microorganisms are growing, they are capable, they become, or they mix together and they would form a D here. Right? And the two drugs are actually need to be planted this way, or the two drugs need to be placed this way. Otherwise, you wouldn't know clindamycin resistance. Okay? So this one, would you report it as clindamycin susceptible or clindamycin resistant? Of course, you're going to report it as clindamycin resistant because it tested positive for the D test. Okay? So can I do it? Do I have to do it on a separate agar? No. You can do it on the same agar or the same plate. Okay? Just make sure that these two antibiotics are placed together. Okay? Clear ba yon? So report ko nito, both are susceptible. Both are resistant. One erythromycin erythromycin sensitive. Erythromycin resistant, and then this one is clindamycin susceptible. This one, clindamycin resistant, erythromycin resistant. Ganun yung pag-report. Okay ba? Okay? Ilalagay ko yan sa isang question ninyo. Baka mamaya walang magtatanong, walang questions, walang
Salamat, sir.
other
Okay po.
questions. Clear sa lahat? Ilalagay ko yan. Tingnan natin kung maalala nila Sir Marco. Kasi parang parang minsan hindi nila Ano po yung lincomycin? Lincomycin is actually a relative of the macrolides, but it's rarely used because it offers less therapeutic range. Kung nag-resistant sa lahat, doon lang tayo lilipat sa kanya. Kasi ganun ang algorithm of therapy. Okay? Again, your question, Minty, anak, is too advanced for medtechs. But to answer your question, it's the second line after these two become actually may isa pa diyan tigecycline muna tigemycin bago yan. Okay? Bago yung sinabi mo na lincomycin. If the rest is everything else is resistant, we go to lincomycin. Okay? Ay, mali pala. Yan na pala yung next pala. Tigecycline pala yun. Dito pala yung sa tetracycline. Tetracycline, doxycycline, tigecycline. Okay? Why? Bakit ganito ang ayos ko, sir? Sir? Kasi, doon tayo sa onti ang detrimental effects sa patient. Okay? Huwag ka kaagad kukuha ng gamot. Oy, bakit ako binigyan ng clindamycin agad? Pero kasi nga, most of the time people avoid erythromycin kasi nga may mga may mga detrimental effects. So let's move to clindamycin. Most of the time you will get this, especially yung mga nagagamot sa muka. Kasi nga target niya is mga gram-positive cocci, majority. Sino dito yung hindi operada? wag ganon. Yung sa mukha, ano ba yung tawag doon? Yung piniprick. Clindamycin cream usually yung kinakapya. Or pag hindi talaga, bibigyan ng clindamycin na injectable. Okay? So, yon. Okay, next. In cases of enterococcus infection, which protein synthesis inhibiting antibiotic is commonly used? We use aminoglycosides. Ano nga yung mga aminoglycosides natin, class? Gentamicin, tobramycin, and amikacin. Okay? Next, side effects of tetracycline in children. This will not only be asked in microbiology, but it will also be asked in your clinical chemistry, particularly toxicology. It will be detrimental to which particular parts of the body or organs? Your bones and your teeth. Okay? So, baka hindi itanong dito, itanong sa chem. Tetracyclines are, the side effects are seen in bones and teeth for children. Kaya hindi din inire-recommend ang tetracycline sa mga bata. Okay? Next, aplastic anemia is the most common side effect of which protein synthesis antibiotic. Hindi pwedeng itanong dito, pwedeng itanong sa chem, pwedeng itanong sa hematology. Chloramphenicol. Sorry, hindi ko na naunahan ko na kayong sagutin. Chloramphenicol. Okay? Hanggang 3 minutes lang ba tayo? Okay lang ba tapusin natin siya? Malapit naman na tayong matapos Okay? Antibiotic that inhibits nucleic acid synthesis, you have to refer to quinolines. Okay? Quinolines, drugs that are associated with this class of antibiotics include your ciprofloxacin, norfloxacin. Ciprofloxacin dapat yan. Floxacin dapat yan, guys. And norfloxacin. Okay? These are recommended for organisms like Pseudomonas aeruginosa and other aerobic microorganisms. Okay? But again, there's a different set for gram-negative fermenters. Non-fermenters, sorry. Oxidizers dapat. Okay? Yung mga kapamilya ni Pseudomonas like Acinetobacter, yan, yung mga ganyan. Mga kapamilya niya yan. Kasi halos parehas yung reaction nila with TSA. Alright? Next, examples of antibiotics that inhibit the folic acid pathways. Please remember sulfa drugs. Sulfatide. Okay? Sulfometoxazole. This antibiotic is given to patients with what type of infections? Usually UTI and enteric infections like salmonellosis, mga ganon. Okay? An example of antibiotic that inhibits the cell wall function, it's your polymyxins. Isa lang yung class na yon. Polystine. Okay? Usually, ito yung mga binibigay sa mga pasyente na may anaerobic infections. Okay? Antibiotics that are affected by culture media, you have to remember this. This is QA, quality control, quality assurance. Under quality control, quality assurance in susceptibility testing, you have to remember 2 drugs, clindamycin and tetracycline. Okay? The control organisms that are usually affected is E. coli and Staph aureus. The analog for gram-negative is E. coli. The analog for gram-positive is Staph aureus. Okay? Next, effects of pH results if it's too acidic, it becomes, tetracycline becomes too large, false sensitivity. For clindamycin, it's false resistance. If it's alkaline, greater than 7.4, tetracyclines become too small, giving you false resistance. Clindamycins becomes falsely sensitive. Okay, so baliktad. Oppositional ang effect. Okay? Next, ion concentration related errors in susceptibility testing. Ano nga yung dalawang ions? Magnesium and calcium. So, pag hindi maganda, kapag sobra ang concentration ng magnesium and calcium, there will be effects as well. What is that? It will affect Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And the specific antibiotic is aminoglycosides. So, ano nga yung aminoglycosides? Sige nga, anak. Anak! Ano nga yung aminoglycosides natin?
Inhibition of protein synthesis.
Hoy, ano yung mga drugs pala? Nakakaloka ka.
Gentamicin.
Oh. Ano pa? Nakakaloka ka, anak talaga. O, sige na nga si Clarice. O, pag gagamutin kasi niya yung Pseudomonas sa, niya. O, sige.
Gentamicin, tobramycin, saka amikacin po.
Alright. Very good. Okay? So, di ba, anak ha, makinig ka. Gusto ko mag-study group kayo ni ni Clarice. Kasi feeling ko madami ka matututunan sa kanya kasi may Pseudomonas respiratory infection siya. Hindi ko alam kung bakit. Wala lang, trip ko lang pagtripan si Clarice. Wala naman siyang ginawa ngayon. Di naman siya umubo. Pero wala lang, trip ko lang. Alright? What is the effect of the following? A decrease in the concentration of ions would result to false sensitivity of aminoglycosides. Too large a zone on Pseudomonas aeruginosa controls. An increase in ionic concentration will result to false resistance. Baka hindi nyo pinapansin, tinatanong ko to. Okay? Baka hindi nyo pinapansin, ha? Kayo talaga. Huwag kayong ano. Inoculum-related errors affects what test organisms? All. Bakit? Kapag sobrang kapal ng organism mo, sobrang thick ng bacterial suspension mo, okay? Sobrang resistant yung makikita mo. Kasi onti lang, mas madami yung concentration ng bacteria, di ba? So again, this results to commonsensical knowledge. Kaya gusto ko talaga nag-experience kayo. Kasi baka mamaya, sabi dun sa libro, ganyan. Hindi nyo siya ma-appreciate pa eh. Example, ganito na lang gawin nating analogy. Gumagawa ka ng juice. Ina-expect mo lasa siyang orange juice. Onti nilagay mo lasang tubig. Gets nyo? Onti ang nilagay nyo lasang tubig. Sobrang nilagay nyo para ka magkaka-diabetes dahil sobrang tamis. Yung hindi mo pa nalulunok, parang feeling mo may diabetes ka na. Ganon, di ba? Ganon ang magandang analogy, di ba? So, pag mas makapal pag sinabi kong inoculum related, yung laman nung suspension. If it's too thick, if you took too much organism and you put it inside your inoculum, you're going to have false resistance. Kasi masyado silang marami. There's too little, you wouldn't even see the growth or the ring patterns. Diba? So, ayan nilagay ko dito, all test organisms and all antibiotics are going to be affected. Okay? Now, possible sources of inoculum-related errors. I think you need to know heavy inoculum. Agar is too thin. Nutrient poor agar. Paano tayo magkakaroon ng nutrient poor agar? Yung mga expired na culture media. Kaya hindi tayo gumagamit ng expired sa micro. Okay? Okay ba yon? Mark ha? Pag nagpatayo ka ng laboratory ha, huwag kang gagamit ng expired. Alam ko marami nagbebenta dyan sa bangbang. Okay? Alam ko yan. Gamit namin yan sa research namin dati eh. Okay? Contamination of slow-growing microorganisms. Mamaya natin saka na natin pag-usapan yung slow-growing microorganisms kasi it's too much information. So, inoculum associated errors that there is false resistance. Of course, as I mentioned before, heavy inoculum or thick agar. Okay? Antibiotics affected by long-standing control organisms. Anong ibig sabihin ko kapag long-standing? Ito yung nandoon na sila sa stock culture mo for almost 5 weeks na. Tapos ginamit mo pa rin as control organism. Of course, it's going to affect, the organisms are going to affect the methicillin resistance. Okay? Common errors associated is decreased methicillin control rings and indeterminate zones of inhibition. Kasi nga, parang kakaiba yung patterns niya. Parang may mga scratches, hindi buong bilog. Okay? Next, what error methicillin zones? Degradation of methicillin because of expired. What is the error when there is decreasing methicillin zones or methicillin resistant zones? Of course, degradation of methicillin and of course refrigeration. Pag sobrang aga nyo ginamit. Okay? Beta-lactamase producing staph is another thing that you need to remember. So, if there's an indeterminate control zones, you're probably having beta-lactamase producing staph aureus contamination. Okay? Now, what are the causes of colonial growth in zone of inhibition? Mixed cultures or mutant strain contaminations. Ano ibig sabihin ng mixed culture? So, for example, you're looking at this one. Saan na ba yun? Imagine this one. Focus on figure A only. Alright? Can you guys see figure A? This one.
Yes po.
Imagine that there's colonies in the resistance zones. That's known as mixed cultures. Okay? Right? So just imagine that there are mixed cultures there. I just imagine that there are cultures here, 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 here. Within these zones. So it's probably you took the inoculum and then mixed it with another inoculum or tumalsik yung laway mo habang nagpo-process ka. Kaya kailangan naka-mask ka. Hindi pwede, o kaya katulad ni Nigel, nag-makeup doon kunwari sa harap ng ng controls niya. Okay? Tumalsik yung dusts, tumubo nung inoculate. Okay? Hindi ko sinasabi na madumi ang mukha mo, Nigel. But ang sinasabi ko is yung yung dust particles ba could have microorganisms. Ikaw naman masyado ka namang masama sa sarili mo. Ikaw naman, blush on lang, magpaturo ka ng contour kay Okay? Next, what antibiotic discs are affected by zone-to-zone phenomenon? Ano naman yung zone-to-zone phenomenon? Ito kasi affected dito is yung ampicillin discs. Kasi kailangan mo kailangan mong alamin kung ano ba muna yung tumubo. Kaya kailangan culture muna tayo before we go to susceptibility testing. Kasi kailangan ma-identify mo na meron kang proteus contamination or meron kang beta-lactam negative staph aureus or beta-lactam Haemophilus influenza contamination. Tatandaan ko ba dapat to, sir? Yes, po. Yes po. Dapat yung tandaan. Okay, pag sinabi kong tatandaan, baka itanong sa exam. Di ba? Next, what is the term for serum bactericidal effect? This is known as Schlitter Test. Okay? Schlitter Test. Don't forget about Schlitter Test. The sample that you need is a patient, of course, serum from the patient taking antibiotics. Okay? Tinitingnan natin kung gaano ba ka-potent yung antibiotics in the patient's serum. Okay? So basically, what you're going to do is for Schlitter test, all you need to do is, of course, inoculate the patient's serum. You flood the patient's a plate. This is the general methodology. You just flood the patient's plate with a plate of Mueller-Hinton agar with the patient's serum, and then let it dry. After maybe 5 minutes, wag masyadong makapal, of course. Probably 1 to 2 drops and then just rotate it several times. And then just drop your antibiotic discs. That is immediately Schlitter test. That is known as Schlitter test already. Now, what do we want to know? We want to know if the organism will grow in your patient sample or not. Because maybe there are interfering substances in the patient's serum. that will compete with the activity or the potency of the antibiotic. That's the reason why they do Schlitter test. Okay? Now, strip methodology for susceptibility testing, we do e-test. I'll show you guys what's the example. Wala lahat ng sinearch ko na mga Google mga ginoogle ko. Ang hirap kasi mag-Google, guys. Grabe, no? Ito yung tinatawag nating e-test, short for ellipsoidal test. Okay? So the MIC is measured at the very bottom. Okay? So the highest concentration is here on the top, and then the concentration lowers. Now the where you read your MIC is at the very is where the inhibition stops. Okay? So highest to lowest concentration. So look here. MIC 0.25 micrograms per ml. Kita nyo kung paano yung i-test?
Yes po.
A drawing of it is something like this. Okay? Alright? You can also do it like this. Artsy-fartsy ako, I like to do it like this. Nung nagtatrabaho ako sa Pilipinas, pag gumagawa kami ng ganyan. Maarte ako. Alright? So, ganon. And you can also use, by the way, you can use an epsilometer, by the way. You can use an epsilometer. There are machines that are capable of doing it right now. Okay? So, depending on the type of laboratory that you have. Pero kung mga laboratory lang yan na sa katabi lying in, huwag kayong mag-expect na huwag kayong mag-expect na, yung katabi ba yung lying in, yung nanganganak si mother, tapos, go, dyan ako manganganak. Huwag ganon, huwag kayong mag-expect. Baka mamaya, Sir Manuel, na-assign ako sa Purok Bangbang Municipality Hospital. Wala naman yung mga pinag-usapan natin, mga bruha. Nag-aaral lang tayo. Kasi baka mamaya, dumating kayo sa US, mga ganyan ang ginagamit, tapos wala kayong ka-idea. Kaya pinakita ko din sa inyo. Okay? Okay. Sir, di ko kasi alam talaga. Huwag ganon ha. Kaya nandito kayo para Kaya kailangan, before pa kayong lumabas ng school, alam nyo na lahat ng mga dapat i-expect. At least mga ideas ba? Hindi yung papasok kayo, wala talaga kayo ka-idea. Yun yung mahirap, di ba? So, MIC is taken at the edge where it intersects. Okay? Okay ba yon? Gets nyo? Kung paano gamitin ng automated approach in susceptibility testing. Most common is Vitek. But now we have BD Phoenix, and we're going to talk about microbiology automation at the end of our bacteriology chapters. Okay? So, be mindful lang. So, monitoring changes in optical density. Okay, so optical density is yung turbidity, kumbaga, ng inoculum, whilst it's being incubated inside the Vitek systems. Okay? Now, rapid slide test for determining the beta-lactamase producing organism. Ito napaka-common yan. Chromogenic Cephalosporin test. Actually, in Vitek, we immediately report an organism as MRSA. Okay? A Staph aureus organism if it tests positive for Cephalosporin. Okay? Why? Kasi, siya it's an organism that associates Cephalosporin. Okay, pag resistant siya sa Cephalosporin, automatically, i-report na namin siya as MRSA. Okay? But it depends on the institution. I'm not saying every institution is the same. They might be following a different policy. Okay? But in our hospital, if an organism tests positive for Cephalosporin test in the Vitek systems, we immediately report it as MRSA. Okay? That's part of our policies and procedures. So it depends. Wag masyadong again, guys, before mag-end ang lecture. Tama ba? End na tayo ng lecture, no? Or 45 minutes pa? 42 minutes pa. Hindi ko alam eh. Anong time na ba
Tapos
dyan
na,
sa Pilipinas?
actually,
5
na
lang
po.
tayo
5:30.
Oo. Hoy!
13 minutes
5:12
pa.
pa lang. Hoy! 5:12 pa lang. Over. Nag-overtime lang ako kasi na-late ako kanina, di ba? So next topics natin is infection control, and we're going to talk about the specific organisms na. O, di ba? Tapos na yung introduction. Marami kayong natutunan na bago. Arnie. Puti,
Yes.
naglalaro ata ng Dota si Arnie eh.
Hindi po, sir. Ganyan
yung Dota face ng mga friends ko eh. Arnie ha. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, you could ask me now before we end the lecture. Okay? 2 minutes lang kasi meron pang next class.
Actually, sir, meron pong
Ano yon? Sige.
clarification lang, sir.
Sige. Go.
Like,
Hindi daw Dota, nagba-Valorant kasi.
Hindi po.
Sorry na. O sige. Sorry, I stand corrected.
yung ano po, yung standard ng McFarland,
Okay.
sa lecture po kasi ni Sir Mac is 99.5 sulfuric acid.
Yeah. 9.5 sulfuric
Pero-
acid. But remember, we're talking
Opo,
about
pero yung kanina po kasi,
barium chloride ang pinag-uusapan natin kanina. Okay?
yes po.
No, the 5% refers to the barium chloride. Louis.
Yes. Barium chloride yon, kaya 0.5.
It's
Pag sulfuric
0.5.
Pag What about Mark? No? Nothing? All right. So I guess I'm going to close our session for today. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully we get to see everyone here. Unfortunately wala. Meron ata akong bibigyan ng GCash reward na naman. Okay. I think it's James Paul. I remember. Just send me an email at this account. Okay. Last week ang nanalo is si Deandra. Okay, I'll ask my secretary to send my number. To send you a GCash of 100 next time. All right? Okay. With that, thank you so much, and I hope to see you guys again next week. And if you have friends who are also having trouble with microbiology, invite them to our show, to our lectures. You guys can repeat the question. You guys can repeat the lectures if you want in my YouTube stream. All right? Bye.
See you, sir, next week.
Thank you,
See you, sir.
sir. Bye po. Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Bye, sir. Thank you po.
Diba nagpo-post pa ako bago umalis?